Good evening, everybody. Hello, I'm Mark Oliver. I'm a co-host and organizer for dev.talk. This month we got an extra special additional co-host, Reece Green, the president of the Games Development Society here at Bournemouth University.
Hello.
And so we're doing a collab with them today to do some games development talks. Do you want to talk about the society quickly?
Yes.
Tell them about your jam, perhaps?
So yeah, we've got lots of jams over there with the refreshments. So yeah, there's little game jam pots. So once a month we do game jams at the uni, sort of like little competition to sort of stretch sort of like the students' sort of skills, if you will. Just put like a game together within like a short space of time, and yeah, it's like a competition, and at the end you can win, say, like a few £100 of prizes and things. But yeah, it's not just game jams. We do quizzes and also socials and trips. So last Friday we went to Guildford Games Festival with the uni, and it was sort of a very enlightening talk that we went to. Lots of networking, and yeah, it's just been great running the society for the uni this year, pretty much. And yeah, it's just been great collabing with Mark. I've been coming to dev.talk for over a year now, so just sort of something I really wanted to do, and so yeah, it's great to finally just do this sort of collab talk with Mark. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Is the Game Society, is it only for students, or can it be a wider audience? Because we're not all students.
You can have associate members. Yeah, we've got the QR codes on our leaflet, so you can join as associate for only £4, and you can still join our community Discord and sort of get tips on games development, Unity C#, for example. And yeah, you can still join the game jams we've got coming up in March, April and May. So yeah.
Great, good. Thank you very much. So it's our first collab with the Games Dev Society. Obviously we're doing games development focus. So it's a new topic, I think, for a lot of people in this room, myself included in that. So I'd like to introduce Tiago Amoroso. They're a software engineer specializing in data science and game development. Have an upcoming Unity-based commercial mobile game release called Scrolly Rolly, which is a great name, by the way, and a first-class dissertation exploring drone swarm technology for search and rescue applications. They'll be taking us through, the 80-20 rule of game jams. Let's welcome Tiago to the stage.
Thank you very much. Hi there, I'm going to keep my phone out. I'm not doom scrolling, I have some notes that will help me talk. So hi guys, yes, I'm presenting the 80-20 rule of game jams, and the plan is to introduce you to the world of game dev if you haven't done any so far, and show you a few concepts that I use to make fun games fast. But before we do that, here's a little bit about me. So I graduated from BU in 2024. Since then I traveled around Asia for a bit, and in the last 12 months I've led a small game dev team to create 10 small jam games. And at the moment I do some client work, so I'm currently contracted by the NPL, the National Physical Laboratory, to develop an e-learning game for their events and website. So what is a game jam? Game jams are small game development competitions. These are the things that Reece's Society hosts. They're usually quite small, 2 to 7 days long, but they can be any length. The longest I've done is up to 30 days. And you usually build a game from scratch around a given theme. Here, this is a game jam that is coming up this weekend. The theme is not yet announced. It will be announced when the jam releases. It's 3 days long, and if you see here, these are the metrics at which you will be judged on at the end of the jam. So enjoyment, concept, presentation, and use of limitation. There will usually also be an overall score where it averages all of your results. And at the end of the jam, everybody who's participated and made a game will go through and play the other games and rate those. So what is the 80-20 rule? It's also known as Pareto's principle, and that's because it was coined by a good friend, Vilfredo Pareto, the 19th century Italian economist. And essentially, it's a distribution model. So one day he was walking through his garden, and he realized that 80% of his peas were produced by only 20% of the pea pods. So it's basically stating that roughly 80% of effect comes from roughly 20% of causes. So in other words, 80% of results come from 20% of the work, and that's what we want to focus on in game jams because the deadline is very tight. So in game jams, the reality is that developers often dive in with an admirable ambition trying to build a big game that is in reality overscoped, and this ends up causing them a lot of stress and also their product to be abandoned. And in the context of games, why do we care? And that's because in games there's like the crunch culture where employees have to clock huge amounts of overtime towards the end of a game's deadline, missed deadlines in the larger context of commercial games, but also in game jams specifically, failure to submit. And all of these issues are symptoms of an underlying problem, and that is incorrectly prioritized inputs. So if going back to Pareto's principle, if we accept that 80% of an outcome is derived from 20% of the input, we can see that we're spending 80% of our time creating only 20% of the outcome, meaning that we're wasting a lot of our time. So, and whilst Pareto's principle can be applied to commercial games, I've decided to focus on game jams due to their extra tight deadlines. And also, game jams are a really great place to validate your idea before you fully commit to full development cycle. So if you look here at the hugely popular Celeste, that was developed in just 4 days for the jam version. And once they got some good feedback, they decided to fully commit and develop a full game. So after applying the 80-20 mentality of the game jams I participated in, I've thought of these 4 main areas that have helped me be most efficient in my development. So, starting with scope ruthlessly. In a game jam, you don't have time to make 10 great features. You'll be lucky if you manage to create 1 great feature. Hopefully you manage to make it good. So the problem is when we try to make all of these features, many of which aren't even core to the game, they all end up barely scraping mediocre. So we want to remember, in a jam game, we want to only make 1 mechanic, but explore it deeply. In this jam game here, which I think was made in 3 days, the core loop of the game is to find the mutated animal in the bottom left as it walks across the screen and shoot it. It was based off of Big Buck Hunting, the arcade game, which is here in the Bournemouth Pier arcade, if you ever go down there. So here's some of the other benefits of smaller scopes. It means that small core loop that we just discussed, it can be comfortably created, which may leave you some time to work on some secondary features. So in this game, one of the secondary features that we did was we included a narrative and some voice lines in the game, and we only had time to do that because of the tightness of our scope of our main game. So you may start out with good intentions, have a nice small scope, but as the game jam goes on, you come up with more ideas, but you don't have time to do them all. So you only want to implement those when the core game is complete. What we do, we create a big backlog list, write them all down, and once we've made the main game, we'll refer to those and build the ones that we think are most relevant. But you don't want to ever let those get in the way of your 20%, the most valuable time. So what if you add progression, upgrades, an epic boss? All of those comes with a big cost, and that is time. So every time you decide to do something, ask yourself if that's part of your 20%. This is the second pillar, building the core loop first. But before we get into the why, let's get into the what a core loop is. Generally, a core loop is what the player does and repeats. So a player does something, the game will respond in some way, and hopefully the player wants to do that again and again. Here are some of the games that I like and the loop that I think that they use. So in Apex, it's a battle royale. You drop down, you'll loot some guns, you'll go around, find some people, shoot them, hopefully kill them. Then the map will shrink, you'll have to reposition, and then you'll do that again and again until the end of the game. And now in the local co-op game, Ultimate Chicken Horse, you start off, you select some items, you place it somewhere on the map, and then you'll platform to the end of the level. Once that's done, you'll go back, select some more items, place them on the map again, make it more complex, and then platform to the end of the level again, and that will keep happening until the game finishes. So, why do we want to make the core loop first? And the main reason, I think, is iterative design. Once your core loop is done, you can see what's working and what isn't, and hopefully you'll still have some time to make some changes. If you find your game isn't really that fun, if you finish halfway through the jam, you still have some time to maybe pivot slightly, make a few adjustments, and make it a bit more fun. However, if you leave it right to the end, because you've scoped too big, you don't have any time, and you just have to submit a game that isn't that fun. Now, in my opinion, polish has to be a priority, especially in game jams, because in game jams, polish sets the game apart. And also, basic polish can be very, very low cost and extremely high reward. And because you've listened to this presentation, you probably have scoped ruthlessly and built your core loop early, which means that you actually have the time to polish, and lots of teams don't do this. They've just finished their core loop towards the end of the jam, but you have time, so now your game stands out even more. Here are some of the reasons why I think polish is so important, especially in game jams. Visual appeal is a major factor, and often it has its own rating category. And average art, if well polished, can look better than amazing art if left in its base form. Finally, it increases player immersion and gives players that feel that they can't really articulate, but will make a big difference to how they rate your game. Here are some examples of polish I wrote down: camera shake, text animations, particles, velocity scaled impact effects, reactive physics, post-processing, and lighting. The most important polish I find is reactive polish, things that react to the player. So dynamic movement, if the player is moving, if the player hits something, you want to have that sound, have that feedback. Oh, actually, I want to say, polish doesn't modify the functionality of the game, but improves the experience of the player. So it's just building on what you already have, the foundation of your game. So this is the same scene, but just with a few changes. It only took me 1 to 3 hours to make. I can't really remember. It was a while ago. But I just added some lighting, some post-processing, and some particles. And the scene on the right, in my opinion, is a lot prettier, has a lot more depth, but it's the exact same thing. And here's some field polish. If you see on the left here, as the player jumps past the vine sways with him. It's a very minor thing. But before, when the vine just stayed static, when you jump past it, it felt kind of immersion breaking, because if you walk past the vine in real life, it should move. Here, there's some particles as the player jumps, follows the arc of the movement, and here, when the player lands, there are some particles and little dirt puffs that come up behind him in the opposite direction of travel. And when the player plays the game, they probably won't be able to articulate why it feels better when you have these things, but it definitely will feel better. So in a game jam, people will judge your game very quickly, especially because most of the games are quite short. They don't have very long to test out all the games. And so if you don't have good polish, and it feels clunky, players will notice it immediately. No matter how clever your game idea is or how interesting your game is, this will be a big factor in how they rate you. But if it does feel good, it'll be seamless and they probably won't notice. But they'll like the game. So team alignment, game jams are very fun, but they also are very often very stressful. And having someone who remains calm and keeps the team aligned on the project, its idea, goals, and the separation of tasks between team members makes the whole thing a lot smoother. Even if you are working by yourself, ensuring that you have a clear direction and that you actually stick to what you said you were going to do is very important, because if you go off track, you'll waste a lot of time and you won't get anything handed in. So you can't explore all your ideas. In a game jam, you're going to have loads of ideas, but coming up with ideas isn't going to be a problem. Cutting them down probably will be. And here is our process. So when the theme is announced, usually what we'll do, we'll all get together, discuss how we've interpreted the theme, because even if you have one word as the theme, let's say in this case it's loop, everybody can interpret that in different ways. If you see this game here, this team have interpreted it as looping animals with a lasso, whereas this team here have interpreted it as staying in the loop by publishing a newspaper. So we'll all come together and discuss our ideas, so we open ourselves up to each other's perspectives. And then we'll also go away and come up with some one-liner ideas. Usually these will be either a mechanic or a setting idea. So a mechanic idea would be something like actions cost time, and a setting idea would be something like an overworked employee juggling lots of mini games in their office. And we'll get all of those together and we'll discuss our favorite ones, cut them down, and then we'll all decide on our favorite idea, go away, spend maybe half an hour to an hour fleshing that out and making it what we think that game would look like at the end. Come back together again and decide from those 3 or 5 games what we think is best and make a decision. Once you do have an idea decided on though, your vision may be very different to the other members of your team. So you still need to discuss, spend 60 minutes, even 30 minutes just discussing with your team, making sure that what you think is what your whole team thinks as well. So just some of these questions, like what is the core mechanic, what does the finished game look like, and what are we not building? So maybe what you've decided to scope out because it's too big from the original idea that you had, that's quite important. I didn't mean to go forward then. But yeah, by doing that, you will save hours later down the line because if you all separate, you're not communicating all the time, you come back and someone's made a part of the game that wasn't meant to be in there or isn't going to be used. So ownership of specific tasks helps not just the individual, but also the team. So for the individual, obviously they have a clear focus, they're not confused about what they're doing. But for the whole team, it means that we all know who to ask. In a game jam, obviously, we have a lot of generalists, so it's easy just to say, this is the game we're making, we do as much as we can as we go along, but by doing that, you won't know if there's a problem. Let's say there's an issue in level 7, you have to jump into Discord and ask at everyone and ask who did this, who can help me fix it. But if you know who wrote what script, who made what level, it's easy just to go talk to them and have it sorted out. Also speeds up decisions. If someone owns the main menu, for example, everybody can give ideas as much as they like, but at the end of the day, the person who owns the main menu will make the final decision. So we want to be collaborative, but if no one owned the main menu, you could just sit there debating it all day. But we don't have to be so rigid in role-based ownership like this, as I've done here. You could also own specific areas, like I just said, the main menu or cutscenes or something like that. For example, on the last game jam we did, I did all of the art, but I also decided I was going to do like secondary player-based scripts, so I offloaded that from our programmer. So as we come to an end, I want you to remember that small, early decisions decide everything, and these 4 pillars here are all decisions. You need to decide that scoping ruthlessly is important to you. You need to decide that you're going to build the core loop first and that you are going to prioritize polish. And you have to decide that team alignment is something that you're going to make time for throughout the jam. So what I want you to remember, that game jams are not about being the building the biggest idea, because at the end of the day, you probably won't be able to build the biggest idea you come up with. You really want to just get something done and get something you're proud of, and that a minority of the inputs create the majority of the outputs. So focus on the things that matter, like polish, and also do game jams. Probably talk to Reese, he'll sort you out with a game jam. Yeah, I also do game jams with lots of people, so if anyone does want to take part in a game jam, just message me, that'd be cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.